welcome to the Intuitive Insights podcast series. I'm Nina Lockwood, founder and director of Intuitive Interim and Executive Search. Throughout this series, I will be sharing engaging conversations with talented leaders from across the UK transport sector. I'm delighted to welcome Steve White, Chief Operating Officer of Govia Thameslink Railway, as my guest on this episode of Intuitive Insights. Steve has been at the forefront of GTR's response to the COVID pandemic over recent months and is one of the most focused, driven and pragmatic people I know, as well as one of the most interesting people in this fascinating industry. Steve, good morning and welcome to the Intuitive Insights podcast.
Good morning, Nina. Thank you for having me.
Oh, you're very welcome. I'm absolutely delighted. I'm really grateful to you for taking the time out of what I know is an exceptionally busy schedule for you. So to have you join us is an absolute pleasure. Thank you. And for the audience, then I'll introduce you properly. Steve White, Chief Operating Officer of GTR. You're absolutely welcome onto Intuitive Insights. First of all, Steve, I mean, you and I have had a great chat. We bonded over a poached egg, didn't we? Quite a few, it feels like years ago now, quite honestly. It was when we were allowed to sit across the table from each other at St Pancras Station. So I've got the privilege of knowing about you and your career to a certain extent. But I'm really keen for you to share with our audience your story. I'd like to know how you got into rail, why rail in the first place, and a trot through your career to date, please, to take us to present day in your role as COO at GTR.
Okay, well, my story began in Derby. That's where I'm born and bred. If you come from Derby, you can only do one of two things. You can either work for Rolls-Royce or British Rail. It's very much a city dominated by those two industries. And in my family, father, uncle, sister, brother-in-law, all Rolls-Royce. So I joined the rail industry. After I did my A-levels, I wanted to stay in Derby for another year because sadly we lost my mother at a very young age and I was just 17 at the time. So I didn't want to go off to university. I wanted to stay in Derby for another year, which meant I had to find some training for that year, and I looked at Rolls-Royce and British Rail, and I joined the British Rail Management Scheme many years ago, and that got me into rail. And I think I've warned you before, if you join this industry and you like it, it gets in your DNA and you don't want to leave. And you know, that's how I've always felt. I did engineering at university. When I graduated, when I went to university initially, I wanted to do yacht design, and British Rail banned me from studying yacht design. I gave them all sorts of reasons why that knowledge would be helpful, in a modern, forward-thinking railway, but they weren't buying it. So I studied engineering, and when I graduated, I had this idea that I would be a train designer for a living, but I didn't want to design trains that people couldn't maintain. I wanted to design practical trains. So I started off life upon graduation in railway maintenance, and that's where my career began. I worked in places like Stratford and Ilford. I was for 18 months a personal assistant to a British Railways board member that looked after all the engineering and safety across the UK. And that gave me an insight into how the railway was organised from the very top, and also pre-privatisation, the way we wanted to run our industry in what was known as organising for quality. So in the early 1990s, we set up businesses like Network South East and Intercity, and those businesses started to operate the railway in a truly integrated fashion immediately before privatisation. When privatisation came along, the first business I went to was Silverlink Trains. We introduced purple trains. They reminded us of the Cadbury's buttons, if you remember those many years ago.
Absolutely.
Purple trains, who'd have thought of it? But we loved them. And we ran some of what is now ARL and some of what is now the London North Western route. And that was my first experience out of railway maintenance and into operations. I was the deputy managing director of Silverlink Trains, and I was loving it. We were running commuter trains out of Euston. Upon privatisation, that business became part of the National Express Group, and National Express asked me to go to Eurostar. Now, if you like trains like I do, then the attractiveness of a train is directly proportionate to how pointy the nose is. So trains with pointy front ends are really attractive, and how fast the train goes. And the Eurostar train does 186 miles an hour. So I couldn't resist the opportunity to go to Eurostar. I was there 5 years. It was a fabulous business, some wonderful people, and we really felt we were competing with the airlines. You know, we were giving people daily services to Lille, Paris, Brussels. We were stretching our legs down to the south of France in the summer and to the ski resorts in the winter, and I loved being a part of that. And in 2004, we set the UK speed record. We went through Kent at 208 miles an hour on a Eurostar, testing out High Speed 1 in its first phase before it came all the way to St Pancras. So I love Eurostar. I was there for 5 years. But when I left, I wanted to do something very different. I joined Siemens. And in an industry as mature as ours, the chance to join what was at that stage quite a young business, quite new to rail, you know, was irresistible. And we were going through a big period of organic growth. So Siemens were winning train orders and getting maintenance contracts to go with them. And that gave us the opportunity to build new depots and recruit a new team of people. So in my time at Siemens, we went from having 100 people to 1,000 people, and all of them were hired. And we had two brilliant ladies, Rachel and Shona, and nobody joined our business unless they passed the Rachel and Shona test. You know, they were coming in because they had the right attitude and the right values, not just, you know, a technical skill set. So I love my time at Siemens. I was there for 10 years and 1 day. It's the longest place I've ever been in anywhere. But it was a great company to work for, one of really strong values. And then I got the opportunity to join Transport for London, and particularly London Underground. I was invited by Phil Houghton to come and run the subsurface railway. So if you know your London Underground lines, that's the District Line, the Circle Line, the Hammersmith and City, and the Metropolitan. You know, includes the oldest underground in the world. Although it's an underground, half of it's above rail. It's got a nice walk through, the Bombardier S stop trains. You know, it's a proper railway. And my wife said to me, "Why do you want to go to the underground?" I said, "Well, for the first time ever, it's a whole railway. My team look after track, they look after signals, they look after trains, they look after stations, they look after drivers, they look after control. For the first time ever, it's an entire vertically integrated proposition." And I went to work on the very first day, and we'd had a massive signalling failure at Edgware Road. And my wife said to me, what's it like? And I said, "Well, this vertical integration's a bit overrated. You know, every single problem is now the problem for me and my team." But truly, I met some wonderful people. I think there's real talent in TfL, and you know, some tremendous values. And I spent 3.5 years running the subsurface railway for them, and then a year leading their implementation for a new digital signalling system to go across and transform that railway. Because the problem we had, Nina, we had brand new trains, but we had ancient signalling. Literally, we were running a railway with technology that spanned 100 years. So the opportunity to bring in the new signalling was something I very much wanted to be part of. And that brings me up to about 2 years ago when I joined GTR. It's my local railway company. Although my background shows you my country estate at Arundel, I actually live in Bedford. Thameslink is my local railway, GTR is my local brand, and I joined GTR a couple of years ago to be part of Patrick Vera and the new team there. And that brings you right back up to speed.
right back up to speed. I love this story, and as I say, we've chatted before, but what you hadn't shared with me was this kind of the very technical detail about what makes a train attractive. And now you've said pointy and fast, then I've realised
That's
that I
it.
am actually now, I am a bona fide rail enthusiast, Steve, because I like pointy and fast too.
Everybody
So
does.
there you go, and purple ones as well. Fantastic. When listening to you, and I'm always fascinated actually when I hear people's career stories, because it looks like a perfect plan. What you've done in your career, if you'd set out, finished your A levels, right, okay, here's my career and that's where I want to get to ultimately, then it has been a perfect plan all the way through. Was it a plan, or have you just been really good at spotting opportunities and kind of identifying where your gaps were in terms of your development?
No, it was absolutely a plan. It was meticulously planned from start to finish. Apart from my very first job at Silverlink Trains, which was an assignment by my board member of BR at the time, apart from going from Silverlink to Eurostar, which was their suggestion, not mine, apart from staying for a decade at Siemens because I just was having so much fun, I never thought about leaving. And apart from going to TfL because they rang me and said, come for an interview. So apart from that, it was definitely my decision to apply for GTR and make a conscious decision to go there.
So, Steve, thank you for that, for taking me through your career highlights. I know that there's going to be many more highlights to come, and we've got lots of opportunities ahead of us in terms of the rail industry. So, with the experience that you've got and your general approach and attitude, I'm absolutely confident that you will be looking for the opportunities as well. I am going to perform my task as a fairy godmother here in this next bit and give you three wishes. And those three wishes are for what you would like, which you believe would really help the industry get to the next stage of its development and onto success in the future. So what would your three wishes be?
Well, firstly, I'd say I'd love you to be part of the Williams review, because if you can go out around granting wishes, that's kind of just what we're looking for. So the three things I really hope for this industry are that we build back better, we build back greener, and we build back faster. And I think that is the opportunity that we have that we can seize. What do I mean by that? Build back better is better in all regards from our customers' perspective. Better performance for them. Our railways look like Swiss or Japanese style railways in the summer. They were amazingly punctual. So we need to give customers better performance. We need to give them better customer service. They've spent months traveling in their car or not traveling at all. They need great customer service to really come back to rail. We need better ticketing. Do you know how many fares we've got in our ticketing database? You can buy a ticket from any station to any other. You can buy it at different times of the day, different days of the week, with discounts that you may be eligible for. We have 55 million different fares in our fares database. And we're still issuing paper tickets for many journeys. So we really do need a better ticketing proposition. And of course, we need to give customers better value for money. During this pandemic, many customers have saved large quantities of money by not commuting, not having a season ticket. We need to really win back our customers, and we need to win new ones. So my first wish is to build back better. My second wish is to build back greener. There's a whole generation now that are really engaged in the sustainability agenda. And we know that electric railways in particular are a great and green way to travel, and that net carbon zero by 2050, if that's going to become real, rail has to play its part. So I'd like to see a removal of all diesel trains on the GTR network within 5 years, and we're working with the Department of Transport and with Network Rail to find out how that can be enabled. So we want to build back greener and show that public transport is the viable alternative to the private car. And finally, I'd like to build back faster. We've learned to do things with great agility during this pandemic. And our Secretary of State, Grant Shapps, is an impatient human being. He has set up an acceleration unit. The clue is in the name. Network Rail are looking at their biggest investment projects under something known as Project Speed. So the railway needs to work with pace in the future. So my final wish is that we build back faster.
I shall do my very best. My magic wand is fully charged. Let's see how we do. I think that all of those areas, I couldn't agree with you more, Steve. I think there's such a huge amount of opportunity facing us. And even as you're talking to me and you're talking about, the providing excellent customer service and making people want to travel on the train again, to kind of fall back in love with the railway, because ultimately, and we've seen this, haven't we, and Transport Focus has done some research recently, once people have travelled on the train again, once they've made that first journey, then they're very happy to come back because they can see what we're doing, how clean the trains are, and beyond clean. They've always been clean, but this is kind of like super duper hospital theatre style clean, isn't it?
Correct. If we're honest, our trains have never been cleaner. If we're honest, that you get a seat on every train now, so it's never been easier to sit down and enjoy the journey. And our trains have never been more punctual. We have to hold on to that and sprinkle some fairy dust on it. There's more we need to do, but that's got to be our new minimum standard.
Absolutely. And I really love the fact you've picked up on this word agile as well. This is something for me which has been one of the key things for how the railway has responded to the pandemic. Because, lots of people, probably, hundreds of people have said to me, well, we're great in a crisis. That's what we do. That's what we do in the rail industry. And yes, absolutely. It's been an amazing response to a massive crisis. But it's not just about the crisis management for me. It's how quickly decisions have been able to be made. Just the obvious one, getting people to work from home where they can. Who would have thought that could have happened overnight when, even as recently ago as January, when I was taking a brief for a search assignment, we were talking about flexible working as being a benefit for that role. And now it's a hygiene factor. We know that people want to have that opportunity to be able to do both. But the rail industry responded so quickly to that, along with lots of other industries. But we can do it. We can be fleet of foot. And I think we've got so much evidence of that over the last few months. And as you say, we've got words like acceleration and Project Speed coming in as well. It's really exciting. It's good stuff.
You're right, and we're trying to create that mindset that this is now our new normal, if you'll pardon that overused expression. We're saying to people, don't expect that 2020 was a year of rapid change, and then we can calm down and take a deep breath and go back to the old ways of working. I said that has gone. We are not going to run our company in the future like we have in the past. We have a saying in GTR that we want to change our company fundamentally and irreversibly. So, we're not messing about, fundamentally and irreversibly. And we don't want to go back to the inertia that we previously had in it as an industry.
Mm-hmm. So there's no going back. There is only going forward.
Correct.
What lessons will you take with you, Steve, on that journey? I think if nothing else, then 2020 has been a year for learning, whether that's kind of for you personally or in your professional life. What do you think have been the key learning points for you?
I think we've learned that when you align people with a purpose, so for us it was key workers supporting key workers, or you align people with values, some of the work that we did for the community, from food banks to supporting the homeless to having mental health drop-in centres at Brighton and Eastbourne Station. When you align people around values and purpose, what can be achieved is just staggering. So that was the overriding professional insight. I think the railway family really got to show its humanity. It didn't just show that we were good at changing timetables rapidly. It said we knew our role and we were all going to work towards achieving that, particularly those frontline workers who are doing it 24/7, with this virus in society. They deserve all of the credit for what's been achieved since March. So I think we've really learned that. On a personal level, I've done some things I didn't expect to do. I've been on a diet since January. It's a keto diet. I couldn't tell you what it is. I don't understand it at all. I'm not allowed any sugar, so apparently carrots are really bad, and I'm not allowed any carbohydrates. But I keep eating what I'm given, and I keep losing weight. So that's something I've learned on a personal level.
Yeah.
I also started Couch to 5K. I had Sarah Milliken as my coach, and I was trying to run for the first time in about a decade. And she keeps saying to me, "It's okay, pet, if you need to slow down a bit more." Honestly, I couldn't have gone any slower. It was like, it wasn't even a fast walk. It was brutally painful. But, a few weeks on, running 5K is now possible. So I think I personally and many others have learned that if you're not commuting every day, you have quality time at home, that looking after your mental health actually is something you need to spend bandwidth doing, and find something that works, whatever that might be. For me now, it's running, and people laugh when they hear that. They just cannot imagine it's the same Steve White they've known for 30 years.
Fantastic. You see, so I've learned something today. Not only do you have a country estate, but you have a personal chef who does all your cooking for you.
Yeah, absolutely.
And Sarah
She's very
Milliken's
good.
your personal trainer.
We get a menu option every night. It's really good. It's take it or leave it. So.
Brilliant. I do see. I had no idea you was quite as posh as you are, Steve. That's brilliant. So some great learning there, and I couldn't agree with you more about the mental health thing. I think when we were back in lockdown 1, and the government were allowing us out for an hour a day to do some exercise. Yeah. So we have 2 dogs, and we would walk anyway. But this kind of, you're allowed out for your hour, and we might have actually on occasion gone a little bit over the 60 minutes, But that for me was a whole new routine. It was something that I was doing at similar time every day. It was helping me to kind of just download some stuff in my mind. Very lucky to live in the middle of nowhere, so we've got countryside all around us, and it's the power of being in nature actually was pretty good for me as well. Keeping that going now that we are in the darker nights of the autumn and winter months has been a bit more of a challenge, I would say.
Yeah, we're asking ourselves now, we recognise the winter is going to be a tough gig for a lot of people. So we're trying to keep lunchtimes free, 12 till 1, give people some space during the day for some fresh air. We try to improve our email etiquette. So if I want to send an email at 10 o'clock at night because it suits me to do a bit of work, then I don't expect anyone to reply at that point. I know Sir Peter Hendy puts that on his email signature. So, we need to ensure that there isn't this norm that out of hours working and weekend working is now for everyone. And we're trying to give people the opportunity to put their hand up and say, I need some more resource or I need some more space, because the workload has been phenomenal. A colleague at the Department for Transport rang me one day and said, you do understand our new approach to train operators now. We're going to set you a series of impossible deadlines to achieve a series of impossible tasks, and then mark your homework on that. So, in a nutshell, that was their summary. But they've given us brilliant support. The industry's worked to meet their needs on behalf of our client for our customers. But the work has been relentless, and we've got to recognise for some people, we need to give them a break, and we need to find a way of making this sustainable, not just stressful.
Yeah, absolutely agree. I think at the beginning there's so many conversations that I was having, we were really benefiting from all this extra quality time. So I can have an extra hour in bed, or I can do more exercise, or I'm spending more time with my family. For me personally, I was in my own bed every night rather than in a hotel in London, spending much more time at home, and it was great. I would say about the 6 to 8 week mark, then those conversations started shifting to where we were slowly but surely, those boundaries between working from home or living at work started to have an impact. And it was kind of, well, I can just do this and it might be 10 o'clock at night, but I've just thought I'll just do it now. And this kind of working hours were stretching and stretching. But I think my sense is that people have realised this, and we're kind of now settling into what will become normal, but with a watchful eye on, we need to keep our heads healthy.
Correct. The most important thing is to give people control. So if someone wants to do a quiet couple of hours on a Sunday morning to make the working week easier, that's fine. But you must do it because it's what you want to do, not that it's culturally expected of you. So we're very keen to give our people the psychological safety of being able to work in a manner that best suits them.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Steve, the third part of the podcast, we talk about leadership, and this is normally the bit where I say, tell me about what leadership means to you. What have you picked up from other people, either and what you would do or what you wouldn't do. I feel like I want to acknowledge before we even go into that since you started speaking to me, there's been lots and lots of hints and tips, if you like, in terms of your view of leadership. You've mentioned values so many times, whether that was for you in the organisation that you've worked with, whether it was Rachel and Shona at Siemens, who, were the gatekeepers in terms of who gets through the door in relation to attitude and values. So that's clearly a key part of your own leadership style. What else is important?
I think inclusivity is really important, and collaboration is really important. It is a team sport. I've been influenced by other managers in my career, some of whom have shown tremendous humility and tremendous collaboration, and those for me have been enduring learning points in my career. When I was young, I was focused, ambitious, and frankly in a hurry to do the best job I could. I'm excited by excellence and great performance, but I've learned to be increasingly inclusive in what I do, and I think above all, collaboration is now the value that matters most in our industry. Everybody needs to collaborate. Rail companies need to collaborate with bus companies. Network Rail colleagues need to collaborate with train companies. Train companies need to collaborate with each other. We all need to work with our clients. Nothing is more important than collaboration. And there is a British standard for this that's now become a Euro norm. BS 11,000 was the standard for collaborative working. We pioneered using that in Siemens. We took it out of the construction sector and brought it into rail to help build things like the National Training Academy for Rail in Northampton. And I just love everything that collaborative working stands for. Can we align on a sense of purpose? Can we agree what we're going to share with one another and what we don't need to share? Can we ensure that we co-create the right proposition rather than have a adult to adult conversation, not a master servant or parent child conversation? So I would say that my single overriding leadership proposition is that great collaboration is the key ingredient for success, particularly at this moment in time for our industry.
Fantastic. And we have seen some really amazing evidence of that, haven't we? And certainly what people are saying to me, it's the train operating companies with the department, with the trade unions, with Network Rail, and all aligned to this common purpose that you referred to before. It's kind of, it's not a them and us. It's not what colour shirt you got on. It's actually we're all on the same team and we're all working to the same purpose.
Correct. And when you invite people to be part of a wider team, most people like that intrinsically. So you can be a member of the Network Rail track team, but also feel part of the wider team that's delivering the entire customer service proposition. It's okay to have teams within teams, but being asked to join somebody else's team and feel part of a wider network, a wider community, most people intrinsically like that. And as long as we give them, a common sense of purpose. So Network Rail talk a lot about putting passengers first. In GTR, we say we want our customers to love us. The words are different, but the intent is exactly the same. So we can have a common discussion around doing the right thing and just use the needs of the customer as our guiding light to make sure we make the right decisions, through those conversations.
Yeah, wonderful. So I could talk to you for hours, I could, but I need to keep it short and sweet in terms of the amount of stuff I want to have a conversation with you about. Coming to the end of this particular conversation, Steve, one of the things that I love to ask my guests, because it just kind of gives me another bit of insight into them and what matters to them most, is to ask you, do you have a favourite quote? Is there something that really resonates with you? Is there something you turn to if you want a bit of a G up, or just that matters or you like?
I've got two actually. I thought I'd go large on this, and they come from people of slightly different levels of famousness, if I can use that expression. Okay. I used to work with a wonderful gentleman called Steve Rees, and he was the engineering director at Eurostar and Northwestern. And he said to me, and it's appealed as an engineer, that railways are in this permanent state of unstable equilibrium. You won't find that in any management handbook. What's unstable equilibrium? It's a system which, if you just give it the smallest push, it runs away and collapses into chaos. You can imagine a ball at the top of a hill. If you give it a little nudge, it will then run all the way down the hill and you'll never see it again. And that is our railway. It can be working perfectly one day, and you just do something to it. You might apply a speed restriction in a certain place. You might introduce a new type of trains. You might have some rookie drivers on the network for the first time. And suddenly what you've created is suddenly unstable again, and you need to put your arms around it and pull it back together. Right. So that for me is a permanent reminder that running a safe on-time railway can never be taken for granted. The number of people that said, you haven't got many customers at the moment, it must be easy. There's still 1,000 ways for a train service not to run on time, even with no customers at all. So that was my first example. Yeah. My second example is rather more obvious and rather more famous. Winston Churchill said, never let a good crisis go to waste. Yeah. If ever there was a saying for this moment in time, I think that's it. We genuinely need to come out of this crisis, with a much better proposition that you and I have discussed. The stakes are very high. We're currently only carrying 25% of our normal passenger loadings. The DfT are subsidising us to the tune of £4 million a day as a result of the lost revenue. So the stakes are very high, but so is the opportunity. And as Winston Churchill said, never let a good crisis go to waste.
Fantastic. I don't think I can say any more than that, Steve. I think that is a perfect place to finish. With my huge thanks to you. I've thoroughly enjoyed the conversation. I'm absolutely confident that the Intuitive Insights audience will enjoy it too. Huge thank you.
Pleasure talking to you this morning, and thank you for letting me be your guest.
My huge thanks to Steve for sharing his thoughts and his insights and taking the time to join us on this episode of Intuitive Insights.